Ladies and gentlemen, I request you all to please rise as we welcome our chief guest for today's event. His Excellency Mr. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and His Excellency Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, the Prime Minister of Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka.
His Excellency, Honorable Prime Minister Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Excellency.
Honor and a pleasure to be here at this trade and investment conference that has been organized by the Ministry of Commerce. The aim of this conference is to bring the business communities of the two countries together to be able to discuss and explore new ways, new ideas of finding new avenues and new opportunities for increasing trade and investment. The presence of the two prime ministers and the high dignitaries from the two countries is a testament of the importance the two governments are attaching to the trade between our two countries, and this is a wonderful feeling for all of us. Fellow business.
Prime Minister Imran Khan took the reins of government. All our economic indicators were pointing in the wrong direction. In 2.5 years, we have achieved, to a large extent, economic stability. And now, the Prime Minister is directing us to focus on growth, and that can only come through investments and enhanced bilateral trade. Pakistan has moved up a number of ranks in the ease of doing business. Prime Minister's government is facilitating investments in Pakistan. Incentives have been given to a number of sectors, particularly real estate and housing.
To represent their country's economic sphere, and I believe it's a very rare occasion to do that, and I'm actually very privileged to do that. Our two countries, Honorable Prime Ministers, have had a long way since we gained independence. You in 1947 and we in 1948. Over the last 70-odd years, we have broken free from many shackles of colonialism. We are finally beginning to think big into the next era where we are going to take our countries. I have listened to both speeches of the Pakistani Prime Minister as well as that of our own Prime Minister. And we have seen a thread which is common, where they are talking about bringing the poverty down, making sure that the fruits of development reach every sphere of the country's people, and those are very important outcomes that we all need to be looking at. We are also very concerned about the people of our country and about the destinies that they would carry for the future. Since 1947, Pakistan has been independent and we have been independent. But by 1992, in 45 years, Pakistan was able to win the World Cup under your current Prime Minister. We used to be very happy to watch him play cricket. Only when he plays cricket against us, we were not very happy. Let's organize exhibitions. It's not only the trade that we should be looking at. Deeper down cooperation is also essential if we are to make this relationship really what it should be. Sri Lanka is also emerging from economic stagnation, which we have gone through for the last 5 years. And I'm particularly impressed with your foreign minister's position, where we should now move from geopolitics to geoeconomics. And why not? I think that's an excellent trend for us to maintain together. And whilst we are reshaping our economy, we would keep that in mind, Honourable Minister, because I think it would be an important way in which we could make sure that we can take forward our own country's economies. Sri Lanka has been able to go through a difficult period with the COVID pandemic, but yet maintain our low interest rates, maintain our rupee. Gradually appreciating our currency would be one of the steps that we would be taking for the future. A continuous pipeline of investments would be also looked at by us, the same way that you are. So come invest with us as well, the same way that Sri Lankans could invest with you. We have the Port City, which is an exciting project. We would like you to come and consider making investments there, taking up positions there. We have the Hambantota Industrial Zone. I know you have some great industries going in Pakistan. You have the pharma industry, the pharmaceuticals. I met some of them last night, and it was a wonderful conversation that we had. Let's see whether we can have partnerships there. And let's promote a sustainable South-South dialogue and a South-South partnership. One of the best economists of Sri Lanka, way back in the 1980s, Dr. Gamini Korea, who was the Secretary General of UNCTAD, was the man who proposed the South-South cooperation. Unfortunately, that didn't get enough traction. But I think today would be a good day for us to bring that back, take that initiative forward, and that would be a great tribute to a great man, and I think we owe it to him as well as to our own countries. Mr. Prime Ministers, I really appreciate this time and the fact that you have been the first visitor to Sri Lanka to come after the pandemic. We greatly value your steps that you have taken.
Ministers, members of the Sri Lankan business community and our visiting businessmen from Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank the Prime Minister for one of the most enjoyable evenings I had in a long time last night. Partly because, of course, Corona, we never had evenings like that. But it was good to see the cultural show and a really relaxed evening, and not to mention the amount of food that I consumed that I haven't had for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, my motivation in politics was only one: poverty alleviation. I struggled for way back in almost 25 years ago. I entered politics because I felt that the best way to reduce poverty in our country would be to set up a welfare state. Before entering politics, I had built a cancer hospital in Pakistan, and the only reason to build the hospital was that poor people could not afford the very expensive cancer treatment. So therefore, the idea to have a cancer hospital where a poor person could go in and not worry about the expensive treatment. But during that time when I was building the hospital, I began to realize that in a country of right now 220 million people, the only way you can help the majority of the poor people is if you build a welfare state. And so that was the motivation. And today, I must say, I had a very good conversation with the President because I realized that he also was motivated by poverty alleviation. And so the current problem in Pakistan which we face is food inflation. And so we were discussing how to bring down the prices of food items. And so we came up, he told me how he went to China, and he actually visited various farms from where he discovered that how the Chinese how they had reduced the gap between the wholesale and the retail. So previously, and in our country right now, what the farmers produce and what that produce is sold in the retail shops, there's a huge gap. And so the Chinese reduced that gap through technology. And so I must say, I thank the President because I'm immediately going to go back and bring in technology to reduce this gap. The other way we can reduce poverty is through investment, is through promoting profitability, business. And so that's my second emphasis right now. We have completely changed our policies in Pakistan, which have sadly been there for almost 40 years, where the mindset was against profitability and obviously against businesses. The whole government structure, the bureaucratic structure evolved such that it was an impediment in the way of investment and the business community. So this whole mindset we have been trying to change in the last 2 years and removing all the impediments, which translates into the expression ease of doing business. And we have really improved 28 spots. We've come down, our ease of doing business has improved according to the World Bank. And so the whole idea is that we generate wealth, and from that wealth we can then spend on the bottom half of our population and lift them up from poverty, which is actually what China did. And China, I must say, one thing I admire about them is that no country in human history has ever taken out almost 700 million people out of poverty in 30 to 35 years. It's never been done before. And so this is something which, your president and I had a long conversation. And of course, I've been emphasizing since we've come into power. So the reason behind backing our businesses, the business community and investment, is that if the final goal is to alleviate poverty, create wealth, alleviate poverty. The third thing you need to create wealth in any country is stability, is political stability, is having good relationship with your neighbors. Because one thing which Sri Lanka and we have had in common is that whenever you have conflict or terrorism, as Sri Lanka and Pakistan suffered from, then the first thing that it affects is the business climate, is investment, and in your case, tourism. In Pakistan also, but our tourism, of course, is not as developed as in Sri Lanka, but tourism also gets affected, and of course, Sri Lanka has suffered from. So, immediately when I came into power, I approached our neighbor, India, explained to them, to Prime Minister Modi, that the way forward for the subcontinent is for us to resolve our differences through dialogue and then improve our trading relationship and diffuse the tension. I didn't succeed, but I'm optimistic that eventually sense will prevail that the only way we in the subcontinent can get people out of poverty is have trading relationship, improve our trading relationship, live as civilized neighbors like the Europeans live. Germany and France have, God knows how many wars they've fought and how many millions have been killed fighting each other. But today, it's unthinkable for them to have a conflict because they're so interlinked together because of business. They're so interlinked, the trading ties are so strong, and especially after the European Union, that it's unthinkable that these countries could ever have another war. So similarly, my dream for the subcontinent is that we resolve our difference, and our difference is only one. It's the Kashmir issue. All we want is it to be resolved according to the United Nations Security Council resolution. And this can only be resolved through dialogue. What we've seen in the world in the last 20, 30 years that when you have conflict between nations, it only breeds more conflicts. A nation goes into war to supposedly to solve one problem, they create 5 other problems after that. You have a war and the US goes into Iraq to finish off supposedly Al-Qaeda, but then you have ISIS in return. So conflicts are no way of solving problems.